Hi, folks. I'm Pete Hendrick. Most of you know me. I was the former executive director of ARST for 16 years. And starting in 2005, we developed a policy on antitrust and have conducted informally education and briefings to board members. And this year we've just partly to save time and partly to ensure that every board member and gets the opportunity to have this training. Before I begin, I just want to say that at the bottom of your screen there should be a control panel. It should allow you, well, I can't explain it that way. The control panel should allow you to do questions and answers. We have the mute put on for all of the participants because we are going to go through this function. But you can raise your hand. Jane Malone, our National Policy Director, is joining me, and hopefully she can help monitor that, because when I get talking, I just get so full of myself I can't read at the same time. So what we have, this is the ARST Antitrust Compliance Training, annual training that we want to do with all boards, committees, chapters, and affiliates of ARST. And this is a topic we normally cover once a year. Our objective is to train all leaders and staff on ARST antitrust standard operating procedures. The standard operating procedure was adopted in 2006, and it is the official ARST policy on antitrust. And this training is done to ensure that we meet the requirements and adhere to all federal and state laws regarding the antitrust laws. So why do we do this? You know, trade associations do a lot of good. They help to develop and communicate and lobby for public policy on behalf of our members, and to improve our economic ability to really thrive as an industry. However, trade associations does this by basically bringing competitors to the table, and by that alone creates a danger for conspiracy that violates these laws, these federal and state laws. So events and conference calls, meetings are venues at which competitors meet, and they could result in an opportunity to conspire. And our job is to make sure that people don't innocently go there, so to speak, don't innocently get caught up in a conversation that could cause a lot more than just heartache. Generally, when we think of antitrust, it's price fixing and other illegal conspiracies, usually market allocation. And again, the trade associations do things that could be perceived to fall into these categories. So if you agree with a competitor, particularly about costs and how you're going to allocate markets, you and your company could be liable for millions of dollars to defend yourself, particularly when you talk about things like what price to buy and sell, how much to sell or buy, whom to sell or buy from, whether or not you deal with someone, and who will win a bid. These are all violations of what's called the Sherman Antitrust Act. And you know, a wink and a nod doesn't have to be official policy or anything in writing. So it can be inferred. You know, when I was trained in this subject, appearances convict. And so that's where we have to be very careful. Are volunteers. You serve with ARST, and ARST has a very strong indemnification policy. That means you're indemnified, that the association must protect you in case there's a liability or a lawsuit. However, a corporate indemnification is worthless when you violate a law, and particularly the antitrust laws. So again, appearances convict. You can be held individually responsible, and so the legal term is jointly and severally. I can't even get that out, so I won't try it again. Joint and several liability, that means that a liability of more than one person where each person is liable to pay back the debt or damages. So if you're in a group, several people involved with a conspiracy, and it's allowed to continue if you don't protest, if you don't raise a question politely, professionally. And then this comes back that these people were allowed to continue this effort. You may be sued, you may be liable to legal and criminal fines individually as well as an organization. So it could be your company, could be you personally, and it could be the association. And that's why we are so diligent, or we want to be diligent about this training. So with antitrust, everything that's said can be held against you: minutes, handouts, emails, handwritten notes, daytime planner, Palm, computer. And we've got a whole list of people who could sue: the Federal Trade Commission, state attorney generals, aggrieved customers. You know, what you put down in writing is very important, and what we record as minutes is important. So these are the main topics that have to be avoided when you're meeting as a group. Prices, starting to talk about prices. You know, what do we charge for a test? Mitigation, payment terms, costs, wages, salaries, profit levels. Any sort of joint negotiation with customers or vendors. The association can't do that. Neither should chapters. Business strategy, bidding tactics, announcements of business strategies. Again, we can't take sides as an association. Marketplace reactions to public policies. You know, we have to be careful about how we're commenting on public policy, and we are. And here's market allocation. You know, you take that side of the street, I'll take this side of the street. I'll operate in this county, you operate in this town, and we'll be fine. You know, types of customers or types of products. We're only going to sell XYZ product, and we're going to forbid topics that we really have to avoid. We have to be careful that we're not lobbying, and we do, ours does lobby, that we're not lobbying for policy that gives one company the advantage over another or puts someone out of business. So, you know, we're very careful to apply those norms when we create state or local legislation. An example would be if we said, okay, we're not going to allow this product to be used. You know, we want to pass a state law that says you can only measure radon with, you know, device type D, or you know, the cameras will not be allowed to measure. You know, if someone comes on the marketplace with a camera that takes a photograph of radon, I'm being slightly silly here, but we can't limit and so we can't conspire to give groups or sectors of the market. That's basically it. Uh, Data collection. Data collection is important for trade associations, but we can't, again, get into prices. Though there can be some work done at arm's length, but it really can't be done by the association. So we do collect data, and it's very useful in public policy. We do have a law firm that advises us on this, a very good one, and we try to get advice in advance, and we always try to use third-party or firewalls in any sort of data collection that we do. Standard settings, another area that is of great concern to antitrust lawyers. If you set standards that limit the ability to compete, you get into trouble. What we have in our ARST ANSI accredited standards process, the Standards Consortium, is a well thought out process. We comply with guidelines, and we have audit steps in place, both internal audits and audits that are done by ANSI that help prevent this from happening. But there's constant need for vigilance, particularly when someone says, well, let's write the standards so this technique can't be used. One of the things about the Standards Consortium is that it provides us with a means to continually update standards and correct. These are living documents, and that's an ANSI requirement. So we feel pretty good about this, and we do include due process and have a lot of non-members who are able to comment on our standards promulgation process. So association rules: who can join, who can't, what are the ethical rules. We have had advice, again, from outside counsel on how to do this and how to set up due process. It's a matter that needs continual refreshing. I would say that the NRPP disciplinary and ethics procedures comply with guidelines. Just use association rules to say, well, I don't like Joe's going to do everything, and our committee is going to do everything to put Joe Smith out of business. Or we're going to make sure that Joe Smith gets kicked out of the association or allowed back in. Back to standards. Standards are voluntary. They're set in the process, which is fair, open, and representative. And they have to be advantageous to everyone that they apply to, who adopt them, and their customers. They can't restrict, in essence, they can't restrict the marketplace. We can't arbitrarily exclude competitors, and we have to focus on technical and operational factors and avoid commercial factors. Standards usually should be reviewed, should always be reviewed, excuse me, by antitrust counsel before being adopted. All of our meetings, our seminars, our communications, we have to keep in mind the key goals of the association, the trade association goals, the scientific purposes of ARST, and participate only in discussions that further those purposes. So when we're setting standards and we're saying, okay, here are ethical rules, here are standards rules, we keep in mind that these are for everyone and they're not directed at any one company or limiting participation in the marketplace. All meetings have to be operated on the basis of a pre-circulated agenda or a defined work schedule. That's really a must. You can't, you have to be very wary of an ad hoc meeting. Avoid any discussion of matters pertaining to the way your company competes, including discussions of any member or non-member companies' prices, services, customer costs, or non-public future plans. to promote your business in a way. My apologies, folks. The three big areas are prices, specific customers, competitors, or market territory, and information concerning any individual's company's costs, profits, inventories, or a conversation about excluding any individual company or members' commercial information, particularly talking about commercial information that's non-public in nature. So, we know that, and so we should do this to counter it. So those are some of the, don't engage in ad hoc, off the record, in the hallway discussions concerning matters in which your company competes or otherwise does business. So when you start saying, look, I'm going to pick up garbage on the south side of the street and you pick it up on the north side of the street, that's a violation of antitrust law if you're a garbage person. I say that because I once ran a garbage business. Or I'm only going to charge so much per dump. I suggest you do the same and we'll fix the price. Those are areas that get you in serious, serious trouble. Go ahead, Jane. It's important that we keep minutes of every meeting, and they should be accurate and complete. And we don't engage in conversation that disparage other companies or their products and services. So, we have problems with companies out there that don't behave well. We have to talk about it generically. We know that there are a host of companies. There are companies operating that don't live up to our standard. Let's apply to the standards and the enforcement of the standards and to public policy makers to make sure that they enforce standards. Let's not sit there and say we want to run Joe Smith out of business because they don't comply. That will get you in trouble. So within the organization, we have to also strive to develop a culture of compliance. We have to train everyone, staff and committee chairs. There are no stupid questions. Is this a conversation that we can have? Can we discuss this? So keeping and having objectives, having agendas, having your outcomes documented, and then asking for help, calling the executive director, saying, we need some advice. We're a chapter and we started talking about this. Is this cool to do? And the executive director or staff member should pursue that with legal counsel early and often, particularly when we start talking about surveys, codes of conduct, any sort of standard setting. We need to have some involvement with that early on. Our council is the council for the U.S. Olympic Committee, and they go through these questions of ethics and codes of conduct all the time. It's not easy. Go ahead, Jane. Next one.
Sorry. Oh.
So we don't talk about prices, business plans, bids. We don't use the association to negotiate commercial terms, even if a government customer asks for it. That's a big one. You sit there and say, oh, the state asked us for this. There's not a state in the union that has regulated the pricing of radon. So you have no protection. If a state legislature gives an agency the right to regulate pricing, then you can be involved. But you can't do it. There's not a state in the union or a territory that can regulate pricing on radon. So don't get involved with that. You get an antitrust issue on lobbying, data collection, standard setting, and joint activities in the marketplace. And so if you have a question, raise it with the executive director and ask them to get back to your committee or the board Can we be talking about this? Go ahead, Jane. So I encourage you to read the ARST SOP, take charge of your meetings, keep minutes, set agendas for your committees. Make sure agendas don't create antitrust problems. Ask us if there's a problem with an agenda or meeting minutes. Limit all discussion. Steer conversations away from competitively sensitive topics. And no ad hoc off the books meetings. No wink, wink, nod, nod. You know, now we're in the hallway. We're going to talk about this. You can't do it. Go ahead, Jane. So it quite often happens that you'll be in a meeting and an inappropriate pick, and you can do it politely and you can be more persistent. You know, are you sure we can talk about that? I don't believe we can talk about that. We should return to the agenda. Let's cover that topic another time after we've gotten advice from legal counsel. You know, if there's a staff member present, you know, Jane, Peter, can you look into that? If the speaker insists, and this is important, I'm sorry, but I'll have to get legal advice before we continue. I'm going to have to stop the conversation. I'm going to have to, if you're not the chair, I'm going to have to leave the meeting. So don't be afraid to do that. It's not as if you're accusing them, but it's better to be safe than to end up being liable down the road. All right.
And there's the slide says Jane.
One more. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So the presence of a government official does not absolve compliance with antitrust laws. You still have to object. If somebody will say, well, I'm with the state, it's okay, we can talk about Joey Smith because I don't like him either, and I think we could get him out of, you know, we should put him out of business. That's an antitrust violation. They do not have the ability to do that or to ask you to be in the room. Even if they have enforcement power, they could ask questions of you individually, but in a group sitting, and that's only if they have regulatory enforcement power. So if you're in doubt, again, you should excuse yourself and leave the room. A state official, a federal official cannot say, I want to get rid of Joe Smith too. Let's work to do that. That's big, big trouble. So there is no such thing as being absolved just because you have a. Go ahead, one more, I think, or.
Yep.
So if you're in doubt about any of this, contact me, contact the executive director, contact Jane, any staffer. We want all staffers to take this and understand it. Refer to the SOP. We retain expert legal advice and to advise us on this and other matters. And we're always seeking to improve. We're always seeking to make sure you know what the law is. This is an area of law that has gotten trade associations in trouble in the past, and we just want to make sure that we're ahead of the curve. We've been circulating the SOP and doing some limited board training once a year on this. We usually do it at our winter board meeting, but we want to make sure this gets to everyone in the organization, so hence the webinar. I appreciate everybody taking the time, and we may redo this so it's more coherent without the interruptions. We will be asking every board member to watch this over the next 30 days and or take a similar webinar at some point. And organizations to have their members and their leaders get this advice. If you have any questions, give me a call, shoot an email, and we appreciate your time and apologize for the technical difficulties today.